Things just got worse and worse and worse as the night went on. Again, valiant effort down the stretch for the Bucks. Just too little, too late. Let's go down and let's see what Coach Fletch and the rest of the crew has to say. As always, go Bulls. So let's head into the locker room right now and see what the guys have to say about that one. Wow. Where do the Buccaneers go from here? What an incredible atmosphere. What a good win for the Tampa Bay Lightning. They snapped a 7-game winning streak. How we feeling, Bucs Nation? It's time to party, baby.
Happy Friday, everybody. Welcome to the Recher podcast. Hope everybody is having a wonderful day, whether you're here in the Tampa Bay area or abroad. Like our guy Dolan. Happy Friday, Jay, and everyone. Damn, these Rays are hot. I thought you were talking about outside. I don't know. I have not been outside yet. That's the thing about doing the podcast at the house. Sometimes you don't have to leave your house until the afternoon. I know that's kind of weird, but to me, what we're rolling with right now, this is the way it goes. Nathan, Elliott, and Benny. Hope you all are well. Happy Friday to you and yours. Thank you to everybody that contributed via the super chat yesterday. Was it yesterday or the day before? Like the best super chat we've had so far. Again, guys, contributions from every avenue is the only way that we're going to be able to keep this thing going. $1, $2, $5, $10, $20. Every little bit helps. So if you can help via the super chat, of course, we'll mention you here on the program. We'll answer any questions that you have. And if you want a question asked that you don't think will be answered, doesn't necessarily have to be about sports. It could be about anything. If you want to get personal too, that's the way to do it. That's my rule here. Super chats, you get right to the top of the queue. We start talking to you. We talk about you and answer any questions that you have. Again, 1, 2, 5, 10, 20. Every little bit helps here on the program, including our main sponsor, our big partner here on the program, Honest Hammer Custom Builders, LLC, 813-244-0956. Residential, commercial needs. Hammer is a guy, he's a Tampa sports fan just like you. And if you have any type of renovations, even just questions about, hey, I'm looking to remodel my bathroom, I'm looking to do some new stuff inside, outside of my house, give him a shout. And listen, again, he's a down-to-earth guy, big-time sports fan here in the Tampa Bay area. Go to thehonesthammer.com and also just scan the QR code right there next to me. So there you go, right there above my name. And there you go. This is our guy. He's our first sponsor here on the program, and I got a lot of love for Russ and the Honest Hammer family. Great people. Is Hammer hiring? Give him a shout, man. 813-244-0956. And there you go, right off the rip. Our pal David Terry, $5 via the super chat. DT, you are definitely one of our most valuable viewers here on the program. David Terry, love you, man. Thank you so much. Jay Bird, my man, happy Friday. Happy Friday to you and yours. Look, I always wonder, too, about Fridays because sometimes the Friday shows you wonder, all right, well, because I've seen this even when I was back working in radio. Fridays sometimes it's a dead period. You don't hear a lot of people go on vacation, especially in the summer, but we've had some good shows. We've had some good shows on Fridays. So, we'll definitely keep this thing going. Remember, July is going to be very light before training camp because I'm going to be gone for 3 weeks. I'll be in Alabama, Hoover, Alabama for a baseball tournament. So I'll probably do a show maybe that Monday and Tuesday. Then I'll be in Alabama for a couple days. Then I'm going on vacation for a week in New York. And then back to North Carolina for Gardner Webb for a final showcase. So, and that's right before the beginning of training camp. I used to do this when I worked at WHAAAAAT as well. In July, that's my time off. That's when I get an opportunity to go spend some time with my family, and I get to be Uncle Jay. I love my Julys with my family and be Uncle Jay. I got 6 nieces and nephews. Each of my sisters and my brother both have 2 kids. I have 4 nieces and 2 nephews. And shit gets crazy. It gets crazy up there in New York. So I always, as much as, I get the chance to spend time with some of my friends, it's about my family at that time. So Uncle Jay, I'm babysitting everybody. I'm holding babies. I don't know if I'm changing diapers, but I'm getting the food ready. I'm watching Bluey. I'm doing all this different stuff. I put my Uncle Jay hat on, try to alleviate some of the stress from my brother and my sisters, and my brothers-in-law, my sister-in-law. It's a lot of fun. And I wouldn't trade it for the world. Young Swag. I love this, buddy. Point, Howard, Gonsalves, Chernak for McDavid would explode the internet. Okay, it was one guy off from my deal of Jack Finley being that guy. I had Happy Friday to Lady Evil. Young Swag wants to know, do you think Isaac Howard gets traded tonight? I think there's a very good chance. And we're going to chat with our good friend Diandra Loux at 1 o'clock today from the Hockey News, who covers all things Tampa Bay Lightning. And she will give her opinion on what happens for over the next couple of days. First round of the NHL draft tonight. It is done remotely, which is interesting. The Lightning crew will be at Amalie Arena tonight. So now, no first round picks as of yet, right? But this is something to certainly be aware of. I'll be keeping an eye on the NHL draft. There's also going to be possibilities for movement. There's going to be opportunities for Zoom calls later on tonight. We got the email earlier from the Lightning. I will be out. I'm going out after this for a little while to a friend's house, but I'm going to bring my stuff with me because if the Lightning do trade for anybody, if they do trade Isaac Howard, I'm going to look to go live. And maybe we'll bring on our good buddy Eric Erlinson. I got to text him and see where he's at. He might be traveling. He's a traveler during the summer as well, but it could happen. Young Swag, I've been saying this for a couple of weeks. Isaac Howard could get traded tonight. I would not be surprised at all. Again, Lady Evil, happy Friday to everybody, to you and yours. And again, follow me on all social media platforms. Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, TikTok, Instagram. I am everywhere. Like and subscribe. Listen, we were trying to get 1,500. We're up to 1,530. We're getting bigger and better every day. We got to keep those subscriptions going, man. Get up to 5,000. That's my goal. 5,000 subscriptions by the end of 2025. If I can do that, my nephew will be very proud. That would be a lot of fun. All right, what do we have coming up on the program today? 12:30 today. John Romano from the Tampa Bay Times is going to join us. He said, I'm going to be at Panera. I'm getting work at my house. Hopefully he's using Honest Hammer. If not, if it doesn't go well, he can go back and hit up Hammer. But John Romano is going to join us from the Tampa Bay Times at 12:30 to talk all things Tampa Bay Rays, how well they're playing, the imminent sale, and then also the big news that we're going to get into here in a second with Wander Franco. At 1:30 today, Jess Duemig is going to join us on the program. One of the voices of the Tampa Bay area. She says she's leaving Tampa, but I wanted to get her on the show before. If you've been to a Tampa Bay Sun game, if you've been to some USF games, if you've been to Lightning games, Buccaneer, like she's done a little bit of everything. She's done some PA work here in the Bay Area. She's battled cancer. She's a USF grad. I wanted to get her on the show because she really, you want to talk about a light. Every single time you talk to her, you smile. She's such a good person. And she said she's leaving Tampa. So I wanted to get her on the podcast today and to be able to chat with her for a little bit. And shout out to our guy, Bart Hill. What up, Jay Bird? Young Swag, you're right. Julian's suspiciously quiet. No doubt about it. And Eddie Encina brought this up earlier this week when we were talking about the whole situation with Isaac Howard. And he said, he goes, Jay, you asked the question about Isaac Howard, and he was so transparent about it. He wasn't beating around the bush. He wasn't opening the door for, maybe this could happen, maybe that could happen. No, he was like, no, not happening. He's not signing here. We're going to have to either trade him or we get a second round conditional pick. I'm like, or compensatory pick. I'm like, whoa, that's pretty surprising about how honest and open he was. Hey, it's just the way it goes. That is the way it goes. All right. Of course, we want to hear from you here on the program, and here is the link to chime in on the conversation. There it is right there, StreamYard.com/FZUJF4HSS4. Oh, I forgot to mention, also in the 1 o'clock hour, we will be breaking down UFC 317. A couple of big fights there, and the U.S. men's national team winning in the Gold Cup last night, advancing to the knockout round. A big matchup coming up with Panama, so got to watch out for that as well. Oh, no, was it Panama, Costa Rica? I got to look it up. It's like escaping me right now because I kept reading all the different information. Costa Rica, yes, because Keylor Navas, the goalie, longtime international for him, PSG goalie. So there you have it. All right, the big news yesterday, and again, I want to hear from you, your thoughts on the whole Wander Franco situation. Just click on that link here in the chat. Use your phone, use your laptop. It don't matter. But we heard the news yesterday. Wander Franco found guilty down there in the Dominican Republic. And it's kind of wild at this whole situation. And this whole thing comes out, and the first thing you see is, oh, he's guilty and 2 years in prison. And then you read the fine print, and then you kind of look at it again, and then you realize, all right, Ray shortstop Wander Franco found guilty on a charge of sexual abuse on a minor, but he's sentenced to 2 years of suspended prison time. So suspended prison time is not prison time. It's like probation. So as long as he doesn't reach out to any other minors, he doesn't have to serve any time in prison. Now, he still has that gun charge from a couple of months ago, so they're definitely going to try him on that, but that'll probably get knocked down. There's no way that that's going to be a more serious case than this. But I'm a little taken aback that after this entire thing, where they were going to throw the book at this guy and he was going to be gone for 10 years. And I know a lot of people are looking at the situation down in the Dominican Republic and going, well, you shouldn't be surprised. I guess I shouldn't have been surprised. And I don't know if surprise is the right word, but it just looked like they were really, remember when in the beginning of this case, they're bringing in all of these different cases of paper. They're going to throw the book at this guy. They're going to make an example out of him. And then he gets a 2-year suspended sentence. Now, again, we'll talk about the impact of what that means as far as him coming back to the United States. But as far as him doing hard time, that's not happening. He's not. That's just not going. He's just going to stay and do his thing. And as long as he doesn't approach any minors, then he's going to avoid prison time. Like, so what does he get? He's got to pay a small fee. That's just, you want to talk about getting off easy. And I think they looked at it, and they said this too. They looked at it and said, well, him not having his contract now over 180 million and him not being able to play in the big leagues anymore, that's a punishment. No, the hell it isn't. No, the hell it is not. And then the mom gets 10 years in prison. Like, what are we even talking about here? We shouldn't be surprised. I mean, you look at the judicial system, even in this country, and every day there's questions of like, why the hell did this happen? How could they make that type of decision? How did this person get all of this? How did this person not get enough? It's like that all over the world. And people knew going into this that things are different in the Dominican Republic. And we had this conversation very early on, and it wasn't condoning the behavior, but being around the baseball world. And if you guys remember, we had Hector Gomez on WDAE very early on in this situation. You remember that? And it's funny because one of our former employees at DAE said, oh, you guys were afraid to talk about the Wander Franco situation. Bullshit. From the beginning, we were all over this thing, to the point where people got pissed off. Remember Shannon Ligon that came on? The attorney? Yeah, she came on too. Hector Gomez called in from the Dominican Republic. So you can say a lot of things about me, right? And I'm not perfect, and I'm not always right. But I am never, ever scared to talk about anything. Sorry. Whether that's here on the Jay Recher podcast, certainly not on the Beckles and Recher podcast, and during my time at DAE. I don't care if it's about race. I don't care if it's about religion, politics. I'm not going to go deep into it, but I'll mention it. I sure as hell ain't going to avoid it. I'll give you my opinion. This whole Wander Franco situation is absolutely horrible. I mean, 2 years of a suspended sentence is just complete and utter bullshit. It is. They were going to charge him with this trafficking and charge him with all these different things, and he was going to go to jail for all of these years. And now he gets a 2-year suspended sentence. Does that punishment fit the crime? I don't think so. It's wild to me. And it just shows you, when you look at situations like this, how if you cover sports, and I've had this conversation with Mark Topkin in the past, if you covered sports, you really should have, studied law and studied, biology, and, because you need to be part doctor and part lawyer. And, there's so many different things that you have to do. And this is like so much deeper than that entire thing. Because when you look at Wander Franco, as much as he gets a 2-year suspended sentence, he may not ever be, forget about playing for the Rays, forget about playing in the major leagues ever again. This dude may not even be allowed in the country ever again. And I love what Mark Topkin was able to do and go out to J. Tony Lopez, a Tampa-based immigration attorney. I actually reached out to one of my friends today to try to get him on, but he was very busy, had a lot of things going on today, because it would have been great to have another guy on that knew about the situation. So here, this is what J. Tony Lopez had to say. Devastating legal consequences. And just think about this. It is important, or here we go. That's because under U.S. immigration law, he said, offenses involving minors, such as lewd or lascivious conduct or exploitation, generally are categorized as aggravated felonies or crimes involving moral turpitude, which is part of the letter. That's part of the literature and like the baseball contracts as well. There's a moral turpitude clause in there, rendering a non-citizen permanently inadmissible to the United States. That's not even talking about work. That does not have anything to do with him working. What does that have to do with? That has to do with him just being in the country, right? We continue. It is important to emphasize that immigration benefits, including non-immigrant visas, are discretionary. There is no legal right to a visa, even for an elite athlete with contractual obligations in the U.S. A criminal conviction of this nature would make approval exceedingly unlikely, if not impossible. In practical terms, it would likely foreclose any opportunity for Mr. Franco to return to the United States to play baseball. Think about that. This guy, right? Did we take it down? Okay, we're back. Think about that. You get into a situation, and what's up to my guy, Joe Martinez? Love you, brother. With the whole Wander Franco situation, this is so bad. That moral turpitude clause that you see in the major league contracts as well, and I'm going to pull it back up so you guys can see it. Like that, it's discretionary, meaning you're going to have to go in front of a board. They're going to say, what did you do wrong? And they have to all agree, or the majority, I don't know the exact specifics of that, to let you back in the country. Forget about getting a visa to work in the country, just to get into the country. That shit is crazy. And when you look at, again, we'll bring up the article, and they did such a good job on this. Mark Copton of the Tampa Bay Times. Very, very. I want to get to the baseball part of it. All right, Franco received part of his $2 million salary in 2024, but once the charges were filed, he was shifted to the restricted list and not paid his $8 million salary for the season. If the conviction is upheld, because he has an opportunity to appeal, the Rays would be free to spend that money for other purposes. Why? Why did he get less? Judge Jacaira Veras Garcia indicated that the panel opted for the lesser punishment due to the complexity of the case, Franco's age, his status as a first-time offender, and the girl's mother was pressuring him. She says the damage that Wander Franco has suffered to his career as a result of the events. But Garcia also said Franco made a bad decision as she addressed him during the ruling. Look at us, Wander. Do not approach minors for sexual purposes. If you don't like people very close to your age, you have to wait your time. Yikes. Per DR law, Franco's lawyers have to file an appeal within 5 days of written notification of the full sentence, which is not expected until late July. Thursday was just the initial reading. If appealed, the case will be reviewed by a 5-judge panel. I mean, when you look at this situation, do you think that this is going to... Okay. I wanted to go back to this too. All right. This is the Rays' whole thing of this situation. All right. Check this part out. People have been asking, what about the Rays? What about them and this money? And can they repurpose this money for other players? The Rays, who have not had to pay him since he was placed on MLB's restricted list in July 2024, still owe him $164 after this season. They would be freed of this financial obligation and have the opportunity to repurpose the money as he would remain on the restricted list. The Rays could also seek to have that contract voided based on the moral turpitude issue. The Rays said, "We respect the legal process in the Dominican Republic and believe it is important to allow it to run its course." The Rays said in a statement, "We also continue to fully cooperate with Major League Baseball as it monitors the situation. Out of respect for everyone involved, we will not be providing any further comment at this time." So people want to know, we've been hearing this a lot. What is a moral turpitude clause? Now, from lawinsider.com, it says, moral turpitude, it's more of like bad faith, right? It doesn't necessarily need something. Here we go. And we'll get this from Wikipedia. Here we go. What is a moral turpitude? It is a legal concept in the United States and until 76 in Canada that refers to an act or behavior that gravely violates the sentiment or accepted standard of the community. So there you go. People want to know, what is a moral turpitude clause, right? That is something that people were looking at. So we heard the moral turpitude clause in two fashions, right? We heard it one, as far as if he's going to be in violation of his contract and if the Rays can get their money back. And we also heard it as far as his ability to get back into the United States. So you noticed how vague that was, right? When you listen to moral turpitude, a legal concept in the U.S. that refers to an act or behavior that gravely violates the sentiment or accepted standard of the community. That is so broad. It is so broad. And what it means to me is that you don't necessarily need a guilty verdict. I mean, we do have one here for people to say, you know how it is. It's like California Supreme Court described moral turpitude as an act of baseness, vileness, or depravity in the private and social duties which a man owes to his fellow men or to society in general, contrary to the accepted and customary rule of right and duty between man and man. So just not being a good human being and doing something that could be against the law, but even if it's not, it's just, not good. Now, that moral turpitude clause is going to prevent Wander Franco from getting back into this country, and it is also going to prevent him from playing baseball in this country ever again. I also look at this situation and it's just, this guy had the world at his fingertips. Everything was going his way. He was one of the best young players in baseball. And he was an all-star and he was a switch hitter. And this team, like, everybody loved Wander Franco. He made incredible plays. He was a switch. I mean, wow. It just shows you how quickly things can go down the drain just like that. And I even had this shirt. I had the greatest Wander Franco shirt ever. And I loved this shirt. And this shirt has been buried in my closet. I haven't even been able to look at it. I don't even know what to do with it. But this is a Wander Franco Simpsons shirt that I wore maybe twice. Okay? And now I will never wear this again. I'm going to freaking throw it in the trash. I'm going to wipe my nose with it. I'm going to scratch my ass with it because this is what you've turned your life into. I mean, what a piece of crap. Listen, people make mistakes, right? I am no judge, jury, or executioner. There's only one person that can do that. But my God, there's certain things that I have nothing. I have no remorse for whatsoever. Hitting women is one of them. Sexual abuse is another one of them. I mean, my God, Wander. The weight, the world at your fingertips. Huge contract. And I don't care if things are different. in a different part of the world. You are living in America. You are making money here in America. Regardless if you're in America. I mean, how do you know that? How do you not know that that's wrong? Oh, and now we're in a situation here as a fan base. And listen, you listen to Pete Fairbanks, or not listen, but Pete Fairbanks' comments were in that article as well with Mark Topkin. And it's very like, these guys don't even want to talk about it. And just being around the Tampa Bay Rays and talking to, I mean, it really is. He's persona non grata. He is a guy that people don't even want to talk about. And they're right. They're right. They shouldn't even talk about it because it has nothing to do with this team and how much better this team is doing. Surprised? Probably shouldn't be surprised that this is the outcome. Maybe a little surprised. I'm shocked. No, maybe a little surprised because not only did he get the 2 years of the suspended sentence, but also the mom got 10 years in prison. I knew from the jump, and if you guys have been following me here on the program, I told you that it wasn't going to be all of those things they threw at him in the beginning. We knew that wasn't going to happen because there's no way that you looked at that situation and you thought Wander was involved with like a sex trafficking ring. Now, did he give the mom money to shut her up and to help or whatever, regardless of what the intent was? Did he give her money? Yes, no doubt about it. Is that sex trafficking? Was he pimping this girl out like her mom was? I think all of the facts that were presented to us, I don't think any of the opinions were looking at that. I don't, yeah. But when we heard what was going on and when we saw the pictures and we saw, all right, the sexual abuse charge, we're like, that's the one. If any of them are going to stick, it's going to be that one. That's what happens. That is what happens. And now we're in a situation where the Rays, I think as an organization, can finally start to move on. I don't see how, and people, again, they're going to go back to, are the Rays going to be able to, because obviously they haven't paid him all the money, right? But are they going to be able to, take that off the books? And, he's on the restricted list, so they don't have to pay him anyway. But are they going to be able to reappropriate some of that cash to somebody else? Yeah, I don't see why not. And I don't see why the MLB, I don't see why Major League Baseball would be sticklers for something like that. This is a situation that is not good for anybody. It's a tarnish on the legacy of him, the team, the sport. I'm sure, and I know when this whole Wander Franco situation came out, that day, there were representatives from the Tampa Bay Rays that flew down to the Dominican Republic to find out what was going on. We heard that from Hector Gomez. We heard that they were down there and they were interviewing a lot of people. And what did Hector Gomez say? If you guys remember, when he was on with us, Hector Gomez joined us on WHAAAAT, and Hector Gomez said, I am a confidant. I am an ally of Wander Franco. This is what he said when we had him on air last year. He goes, he trusts me. He trusts me with information. And Hector Gomez joined us on air that day, and he said all these different things about it doesn't look good. And everybody he's talking to says that Wander will never play in the big leagues again. And then I reached back out to Hector after that. And I said, Hector, because he speaks a little bit of a little bit broken English. So I didn't want to misquote the man. And I reached back out to Hector Gomez after we had him on that day. And I said, do you think Wander will ever play in the big leagues again? And he said to me, again, clear as day, Jay, I've been with Wander for a very long time. He trusts me. He considers me an ally. But everybody I talk to says this is not going to end well. And he will never play in the big leagues again. Think about that. I haven't worked at WDA since November. We've been talking about this since last year. Now, obviously, the logistics have to come out. We have to work through the minutia. We have to understand what the charges are. And we didn't know the backstory at the time. But the fact that early, somebody that considered him a friend and Wander considers a friend, told us that early, this doesn't look good. that was when the red flag goes up. Because usually when you have a friend, when you have a confidant, hey man, you might be able to massage it. You don't know the whole story. Everything negative, negative, negative. Forget about him playing for the Rays again. He might not even be allowed in the country again. Think about that. All right, we'll keep this conversation going. We'll talk all things Rays with our good buddy from the Tampa Bay Times, John Romano. Hey, John, how's it going, buddy?
I'm well. How are you, Jay?
What a busy craziness with this whole Wander Franco situation. I mean, we've kind of knew what was going on. I guess we were reading the tea leaves a little bit, but to finally get the verdict yesterday from a 2-year suspended sentence, did any of that surprise you?
I keep going back and forth. There were times that I thought he was absolutely sunk. There was no way he was going to get out of this mess. And then after the trial was delayed the first time last year, you sort of got some indications maybe that some of the witnesses weren't going to show up, and maybe there was some behind the scenes dealing going on, and maybe he had a chance to wiggle out of this. But it seems once we found out what was in the videotape from the victim in the case, it was all over for him. I mean, it's a tragic situation for everybody involved. Certainly for the girl, her family. I mean, not only was she essentially sold out by her mother, but now her mother's in prison for 10 years. What is that girl's life going to be going forward from here? So, while it's awful that Wander Franco's Major League Baseball career seems to be over, this is something he brought on himself, whereas that young lady did not have a choice in the matter.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I have no empathy or sympathy for Wander Franco at all. I mean, you make the decisions. That's the bed. You have to sleep in it. Surprised at the suspended sentence, though, for 2 years. Surprised he didn't get prison time?
I was considering that the mother got 10 years.
Right.
I was absolutely stunned that he didn't get any prison time. I mean, what the judges were saying with that 10-year sentence is we absolutely believe the girl's story. We believe that Wander paid her mother money to either start the relationship or to keep it quiet, one or the other. Either one's going to be a crime. So if the judges believe that, I don't see how you can let Wander walk out of that courtroom a free man. That to me was the stunning part of it, that you got 10-year sentence on this side and a 2-year suspended sentence on the other side. It makes no sense.
Yeah, I thought, Mark did a good job of writing it. You did as well. Again, subscribe to the Tampa Bay Times, guys. You hear me say that all the time. Support local. I thought it was very interesting that the judge almost was playing like a mediator, but playing like a counselor for Wander a little bit, saying, Wander, this is what you have to do. You got to stay away, like, almost advising him, like, this is what you have to do, or you're going to get 2 years, but also taking into account that his career was going to be over. So did you find it a little weird that they were, hey, you're not going to get this $180 million, and they kind of use that as like part of the punishment? I thought that was I don't think that has anything, that shouldn't have anything to do with it.
You're absolutely right. In a court of law, it should come down to the evidence, the charges, and the verdict, and anything else is superfluous. And the fact that they basically said, okay, you've suffered enough because it looks like your Major League Baseball career is over, and you just threw I guess he has $164 million left on the contract. You just threw that in the trash. That's punishment enough. That's not how justice is supposed to work in the legal system.
No, it was almost like time served, right?
Yeah.
It's another word for time served. It was heartache served, right? Like, that's such a weird dynamic of this. I've moral turpitude clauses. I mean, I've been saying that word more times in the last 72 hours than probably in my entire life. Moral turpitude as far as whether he'll be ever allowed back in the country, I thought is interesting. And then also with the MLB and his contract. people are wondering now, will the Rays be able to get out from this 164 remaining? I think they will, John. I don't know how Major League Baseball is going to say, oh yeah, you still have to pay this guy if he's never going to even be, forget about playing, allowed back in the country. Do you agree with that sentiment? How long do you think maybe something like that could take?
I absolutely agree with you on that. It's, to me, the interesting question is going to be whether the Rays seek to have the contract voided. If they actually say, because of this conviction, this sexual crime conviction, you have forfeited your rights to this contract,
Right.
or whether they just continue with the status quo. Basically, they stopped paying Wander last year once the charges were brought and he was not allowed to enter the United States. He couldn't get the visa at that point. They stopped paying him. They put him on the restricted list and stopped paying him. If he can never come back to the United States, essentially the contract is over anyway.
Right.
So they don't have to pay him anymore. So I would doubt that they would actually try to void the contract, because the Players Association is likely going to fight that. Wander Franco would likely try to fight that if
Right.
they tried to have it voided. The Players Association, it would be a bad look for them to sort of fight on behalf of somebody accused of a sex crime. But for the Players Association, it's a much larger picture of, it's a guaranteed contract. We are always going to fight for a guaranteed contract because we don't want any kind of precedent for another case down the road.
That's a great point.
But if he can't get the visa, it's just a moot point. They never send him another paycheck.
So it just sits out there. So it's just kind of floating. It's floating out in the Atlantic somewhere, right? It's just a boat it's like a buoy in the Atlantic just sitting out there. I didn't realize that. And that's a great point that you bring up, because what the Players Association don't want to do in any sport is open a pathway for guaranteed contracts to be voided. And this may be the extreme, but the next situation may be 40% of this. And if you start walking down that path, right, you don't want to open that door up, because you don't want to give any type of leeway, especially when we have these negotiations coming up. Hell, we got one with the NHL coming up today. It's crazy.
Yeah. So, and there is some precedent for it happening this way. A few years ago, there was a Pirates reliever, I'm trying to think of his name, Felipe Lopez maybe, who was convicted of sex crimes similar to Wander, except in the United States. He actually served a jail term here. He still had money left on his contract. The Pirates stopped paying him. As soon as his jail term ended, he was deported. I think he was from Venezuela. He was shipped out of the country. The Pirates never paid the remainder of that contract. So this one's a little different because it's so many more years and so much money involved. But I think that's the way the Rays are going to go. And to me, this is the best of both worlds for the Rays. I don't think they would ever admit this publicly, but they get out from under a contract that they no longer wanted to be involved in, whether it was because, the moral turpitude part of it, whether it's because the team is being sold and that contract becomes a debt to the new owner, whether they believe that after 2 years Wander's skills were going to deteriorate, whatever the reason. I don't think the Rays wanted to see Wander Franco in a Rays uniform again. But I also don't think the Rays were they didn't want to cheer for the kid to go to prison either.
Yeah.
So, the results of this case for the Rays is about as good as you could hope for. We are out from underneath that $164 million. Wander can go live his life, whatever he's going to do, if he's going to try and play baseball in Latin America, whatever it is. But he's no longer their problem, and they didn't have to actively cheer against one of their own.
Yeah, it was almost like the path of least resistance, right? Like, we're just going to stay down the middle and not say anything. Just let all the commotion out here. They knew that they were going to have a statement prepared. They were going to throw it out there, and you knew what was coming. We're going to let the legal process play out and go from there. I was actually thinking about this yesterday. I was listening to Topper on with our guys at DAE, and he said something. Wouldn't it be crazy if that happened, the Rays sold, and the stadium news, and they were in first place? And I had this picture in my head of you and Mark sitting in a room just banging out a story, each of you, story after story for 12 hours. It's just wild how, all right, that story's done, but we're still now talking about who Stu could sell the team. And we talked about this about a couple months ago, you and I, and you thought it was going to be, hey, you were very vocal of like, Stu's going to sell this team. And the Rays shortly thereafter said, "Oh, the Rays aren't for sale." Well, a couple months later, we're talking about all these different groups. What's the latest on a possible sale? We knew that it sounded like there was going to be a deadline and could have been this week. But what's the latest as far as Stu moving on from the team?
I think today, either today or even yesterday, was the end of the exclusive rights agreement for the Zalewski Group in Jacksonville. Doesn't mean that the deal is over if they don't announce a sale today. But now if Stu wants to talk to Tripp Miller in Memphis, the hedge fund guy who has expressed interest, actually was involved in a potential sale of the Rays several years ago. Stu would be free to talk to him if the deal is not reached with the Jacksonville people today. But from the indications we're getting, what Mark is getting, what Mark is hearing, is that this deal does look like it's got a very good chance of happening. The Jacksonville deal. I don't know how quickly it would happen. I would assume Stu would retain control of the team through the rest of the season. But there does seem to be a lot of momentum for this deal to get done.
Yeah, I know there's a third group here in the Tampa Bay area that I heard when I was up in South Carolina that is willing to go to 2 million, if not more than that. I just don't see, if you know that you have, just think about it. Stu's a businessman, whether you like him, whether you don't like him, whether you like how he runs a baseball team or not. Your letter of intent is fine, but it's not a bill. It's not a bill of sale, right? You're not just closing things down. It's not an exclusive negotiating thing beyond the deadline. So if you know that you have multiple people that are willing to pay more than 1.7 billion, even though you could have a deal in place, why wouldn't Stu try to go to a higher bidder, right? Knowing who he is, John, why wouldn't he try to pit these guys against each other and try to drive the price up, right? That would make sense.
Absolutely. I mean, if you have followed the saga of Stu trying to get a stadium built over the last 15 years, he's a hard negotiator. He only does deals that he wants to do, that are on terms that he finds are favorable for him. I totally agree. I think he would be willing to talk to, there's several groups in Tampa that are talking about making a bid. There's Tripp Miller even said, I believe, that he would go over and above 1.7 billion. It's just a question of whether that is all true. I mean, it's very easy to say that to a reporter. It's a lot harder to come up with $2 billion. And like I said, Tripp Miller tried to buy the team a few years ago and obviously didn't come to an agreement with Stu at that time. So, is it possible that he ends up dealing with them? Is it possible that he ends up dealing with one of the Tampa groups? Yeah, it certainly is. But that's not the indications that we seem to be hearing right now.
We got to just sell some of Ed and Cena's wrestling action figures, and then we'll come up with the $2 billion to buy the team. If let's say one of these groups, whoever buys it, John, they got to stay in the Tampa Bay area, right? Do you see if any of, if I know it's tough to tell, but I think they would want to stay in this market. And then obviously that's one part of it. We still got to solve the stadium situation. Do you think that new group would try to, all right, let's go back to the Pinellas side, or do you think that group would try to do it on the Hillsborough side? Because my goodness, we just, even if we solve one part of this equation, there's still the other big part of it too, that was taking up a whole lot of our discussions before, 6 months ago.
You're absolutely right. And in some ways, that's the harder part of the equation. Right. I mean, you're going to have to come up with at least 1.7 billion to buy the team. Then building a stadium is going to cost, by the time we get around to doing it, it's going to be 1.5 billion or more. Whether somebody thinks they can fund it all themselves or whether they're going to be looking for some public dollars, I would assume they'll look for public dollars. It's going to be a hard road to hoe. The Tampa groups, I know at least one of the Tampa groups is much more interested in building on the Trop site because the members of that group are developers and they care a lot more about the land portion of that deal than the actual stadium or the team. They see the value in buying in to develop that land. Right. The Jacksonville group they haven't talked about it at all. It's hard to know exactly what their plan is. I mean, obviously the lead investor is a home developer. He knows the development business. He hasn't done skyscrapers or amphitheaters or things like that, but he knows the business. Um, I think they would be amenable to either Pinellas or Hillsborough, I'm guessing,
Right.
much like Stu was, just what's the better deal? I mean, the way Stu always looked at it was he wanted to be in Tampa. He preferred Hillsborough County, but he wasn't going to go there if he had to pay a lot more than he was going to pay in St. Pete. And that's what ended up being the case. He could make a lot more money joining the development deal around the Trop, and that would offset his costs for building the stadium. That was the deal he came to with St. Pete and Pinellas County, and then ultimately pulled out of because he decided the margins were not in his favor after all. My fear is that, the commissioner of baseball, Rob Manfred, has already made it clear that he wants the team to stay in this market, that he believes Tampa Bay is a Major League Baseball market. I take him at his word on that. But if the Zalewski Group buys this team and they talk to Hillsborough and they talk to Pinellas and they spend 2-3 years and extend the Trop lease an extra couple of years because they have no other place to play. But if they spend several years trying to get a stadium built and can't get the land, can't get the public money, whatever the reasons are, at some point they're going to go back to Rob Manfred and say, we've tried as hard as we could. Right. We can't get a stadium built here. We can't stay in a broken down Tropicana field forever. We need to be able to look outside the market. I think at that point, Manfred's going to have to let them do it. I mean, if you go back 10, 12 years ago, Manfred would stood in Oakland, California, and told the people there, this team belongs in Oakland. It has a long history in Oakland. It's not going to leave Oakland. Things change, stadiums don't get built. Eventually the commissioner is going to have to let an owner move. Now, would they look at Orlando then at that point, or, are all bets off if they don't get a stadium built in Tampa Bay? Do they look at Memphis, Nashville, Charlotte, San Antonio, wherever else in the Southeast United States? That's the big question.
But we don't have to worry about Jacksonville. They're not going to Jacksonville.
I don't think so.
No,
I don't think Jacksonville is going to be in there.
No, I'm with you. What do you think the lasting legacy of Stu Sternberg is going to be? Because, I always say we live in a comparative society, right? You compare your new car to your old car, your new girlfriend to your last girlfriend, your new job to your old job. And we always looked at, Stu Sternberg as like, all right, well, he's not the last owner. And now we're looking at the next owner, right? When we look back on it, when he does eventually sell the team, is it going to be the owner that was able to have some sustained success, or is it going to be the failed attempts to get a new stadium and to, really reinvigorate this team and, get them out of the doldrums of one of the lower payrolls of the league?
I hope history is kinder to Stu than what we're seeing right now. People are angry now. People are, they were. A lot of people were already unhappy with Stu with the idea that he didn't spend more. He let, some very popular players leave in the name of, reinventing the team and keeping the payroll low and things like that. People had a lot of problems with that. Once he pulled out of the new stadium deal in Pinellas County, that, his popularity, fell completely off the table at that point. There are very few people left to defend him in Tampa Bay. But I will maintain till the day I die that Stu has performed better as an owner of a Major League Baseball team than Tampa Bay has performed as a Major League market. And I specifically say Tampa Bay as a market. I'm not pointing the finger at fans because it's not fans per se. It is the market. It is corporations that, don't buy sponsorships or don't buy season tickets or suites or whatever. And I don't even want to point the finger at corporations because there just aren't as many corporations in this market as there is in most Major League Baseball markets. But if you just look at it from a purely statistical standpoint, since 2008, the Rays have the third best record in Major League Baseball. The only two teams better are the Yankees and Dodgers, the two behemoths of Major League Baseball. And this little crappy team with no money is right behind them in terms of wins. That they've been to the World Series twice. They've been to the playoffs since, I don't know, 9-10 years in that span, whatever it is. If you look at it from that standpoint, they inarguably are a successful franchise. And then if you look at the other side and say Tampa Bay has been in the bottom third and usually in the bottom 3 or 4 teams in terms of attendance, the team itself on the field has outperformed the market.
Right.
Again, not the fault of you or I or your next door neighbor or anybody else failing to buy tickets. It's just reality. It's the market itself. It's an imperfect market, and things have to be perfect with the stadium and with the ownership and everything else to make it work. And we haven't had that. So, I would hate the idea that people look at Stu's regime as being failed. It wasn't failed. He took a franchise that was a joke, that had gotten absolutely nothing right in the first decade of playing baseball. He took that franchise and turned it into a model franchise on the field. There, you ask baseball fans in Cincinnati, Pittsburgh, Anaheim, you go down the list, ask fans, would they rather have Stu Sternberg or who they have? Every single one of them would take Stu Sternberg because of the novel ideas, the out-of-box thinking, the freedom he gave to his front office to do what they wanted. I mean, when you talk about owners, whether you're talking baseball, football, hockey, whatever else, what do you want from owners? You want them to hire the right people, stay out of their way, and pay what it takes to win. Well, Stu did 2 of those things. He hired the right people. He stayed out of their way. He let them do their things. Now, did he have the money to spend more on payroll? That's an argument that could go on forever. And I don't, without MLB opening their books, I don't know if we'd ever get a true answer, whether he could, whether he was putting every bit of profit back into the team, or whether he was keeping some for himself, or, whether he was keeping some of the revenue share money. I don't know. But he put a winner on the field, and that is undeniable.
No doubt about it, man. I love your response there, because it's very intricate, because I don't know if we'll ever come to a concrete solution. And I think maybe it will be more favorable as the time goes on, because you look back at the success and then you have to go like, hey, he's a part of it. He is a part of it. You can't just eliminate that whole side of it. Before I let you go, I want to ask you about this whole thing of where the hell the Rays are going to play in the postseason. Like, it's just such the questions that the Rays have to deal with. It's unlike any other team in any other sport. Now we're talking about, like, they can't play their playoff games at Steinbrenner Field. Like, how do you see they can't do that? What are they? You're just going to get rid of your home field advantage and go play in Atlanta or go play in Miami? Like, this sounds crazy to me.
Well, and it's wrong on 2 different levels. Not just do you lose your home field advantage, but now you're screwing your fans too.
Right.
I mean, you're trying to build a fan base here while you're in the middle of selling the team. You're in the middle of trying to build a new stadium, and then you're going to tell your fans, oh, by the way, we're not going to play the postseason games, anywhere near you. You're going to have to take a plane to Atlanta or drive to Miami or whatever else. I understand the concern. I understand if it was just the money, I would say absolutely not. Major League Baseball has to suck it up and accept that the revenues are going to be smaller because they're not going to have as big a crowds in a spring training ballpark. But it's not just that. It's also the production of a postseason game, the amount of space they need for their sponsors that they bring in, for the media, for the networks that are going to have cameras everywhere, and that stadium is not set up for those kind of things. I mean, you've watched the games on TV from Steinbrenner. I mean, you can't even see balls that go into the left field and right field corners. You got to wait 3 seconds to figure out whether a ball has been caught or not, because there's no great camera angles. So that, to me, that is the only argument baseball has in terms of we may need to find a different stadium.
Yeah, I think there's better camera angles at Jesuit High School and UT than Steinbrenner Field. John Romano, Tampa Bay Times. Again, guys, I say this all the time. This is our discussion right there is a huge reason why you want to subscribe to the Tampa Bay Times. Get a subscription today, tampabay.com. You may not think it's that big of a deal, but one subscription goes a long way. Get it as a birthday gift. Get it for somebody else, because our sports guys here in the Tampa Bay area, even our outside of the sports guys, do such a phenomenal job. And when things like Wander Franco, things like the stadium, things like the NHL draft with our guy, I hadn't seen it tonight, You want to be all over it with our friends at the Tampa Bay Times. John, thank you. I know you're busy, got a lot going on. This was a great discussion. It always is with you, my friend. Thank you so much. Have a great weekend.
Thank you, Jay. Take care.
All right, buddy. All over it. All over it. Wow. What a great discussion. I feel like when I talk to John, when I get off air, I'm like, wow, dude, I learned so much. And the legacy part of the Stu Sternberg thing is so intriguing to me because it's complicated, right? It's like the your Facebook relationship status. It's complicated. Like, what are we going to say about Stu Sternberg? What are we going to say about him in 5, 10, 15, 20 years? Because when you don't experience that, when you don't live in that, and we know how the Tampa Bay area is, a lot of people moving out, a lot of people moving in, more people moving in. You guys can stop moving here. Thank you very much. When you're not experiencing that firsthand, because people talk about the Cowboys that owned the Lightning, right? And people are like, that was terrible. That was awful. People talk about Namoli. People talk about Hugh Culverhouse with the Bucks. I didn't really experience that, so I can't really talk about that. But we were here for the Stu era, so we can look back and we can talk about it. Very, very good conversation. Again, subscribe to the Tampa Bay Times. Today, I want to talk real quick about my guy, the Hammer. Honest Hammer. You know how much we love Hammer here on the program. This is a guy that is all over it. And looking at these construction services that he has for you, and you can see who's going to be our next guest with the little thing back there. We'll just keep it back there because she's got a pretty name as well. Honest Hammer Custom Builders, 813-244-0956. Go check them out today for any of your residential commercial needs. The one thing we love about Hammer is he's a Tampa Bay sports fan. He's a great dude. And he listens to the show. He's been a guy that's been a big time supporter ever since the WDAE days. He still listens to WDAE. He is just one of those guys that sees the bright side of everything. He's so positive and so optimistic. And I just love being around the guy and love talking to him. And this is the kind of business you want to support here in the Tampa Bay area. Support local. I say that all the time. The only way that we're all going to be successful here in the Tampa Bay area is if we're working together. So Honest Hammer Custom Builders, residential, commercial, 813-244-0956. Go to thehonesthammer.com. You can scan the QR code. It's always going to be up on the page here, right on the Jay Recher podcast. We love the guy. He's just a really, really good dude. Some breaking news in the National Hockey League. John Tavares going back or staying with the Toronto Maple Leafs, a 4-year extension with the Leafs, carrying a $4.38 million AAV. It's one of the most unique situations in all of sports. John Tavares leaves the New York Islanders. You saw the picture of him in Maple Leafs pajamas when he was a kid. He goes there. He's supposed to be the reason why they are successful annually. He's the captain of the team. And then they don't do anything. And then they strip him of the captaincy. And then they have this big ceremony. And they name Austin Matthews the captain. And you're like, all right, well, this has to mean that Tavares is done, right? No, he signs a 4-year contract to stay there. This is so weird. This is like your wife divorcing you and marrying your best friend, and you live in the mother-in-law suite in the back of the house. Like, this is so strange to me. I don't understand this whatsoever. I'm at a loss for words how John Tavares' career has turned out. Because you guys know, my dad's a huge Islander fan, and I did not grow up an Islander fan, but this was the one team that my dad and I did not agree on, so I never hated on the Islanders because he would get pissed. I want them to do well for my dad. I want them, my uncle and some of my cousins. Yeah, enjoy it. Don't have more success than when I was growing up than the Rangers, or certainly not now with the Lightning. Have your fun. So when they had Tavares, I'm like, all right, this guy's good. And then when he leaves, I'm like, oh, man, this is rough. But he didn't really, what did he do? No conference finals for the Toronto Maple Leafs during his tenure there. And then he gets stripped of the captaincy, and then he comes back. Like, I don't get it. I really don't understand. Like, these are the people that blamed you for everything. Look at Mitch Marner. There's no way Mitch Marner's going back to the Maple Leafs. This is a guy that grew up a Leafs fan too. And people want to blame him for everything. It's the blame is Winston. That's what I call all the Toronto Maple Leafs fans up there. Everybody wants to blame this and that. Like, the roster construction has been terrible. Terrible. They don't care about defense. They don't care about playing the games the right way. They don't care about a goaltender. Like, it's just so weird. Let's just get 4 really great offensive players. That's going to work. When does that work? The only time that they really made some noise is a couple years ago when they got one of the best two-way forwards in the game in Ryan O'Reilly, a guy who pretty much single-handedly won that series against the Tampa Bay Lightning. Remember, whether it was goals, because Chernak wasn't in the series after the hit by Michael Bunting, and then winning the faceoff when Morgan Riley scored the goal. I don't know. And then they get away from that, don't re-sign the guy. What the hell do I know, right? But John Tavares goes back. He's back to the mother-in-law suite at the house that he's probably still paying rent at. All right, let's bring her in. Do you like that? Did you like my my analogy there of John Tavares living in the mother-in-law suite of his own house?
Yes, I was watching that break as I was waiting to come on, but I'm with you, Jay. Toronto is, anyways, first of all, thanks for having me on. But yeah, no, Toronto is the Mitch Marner situation, and just Toronto in general is, I don't even know. It's like a soap opera every day.
It's Days of Our Lives.
Days of Our Lives.
Days of Our Leafs. Oh, that's not too bad. Diandra Loux of the Hockey News joins us. Thank you so much for joining us. I was looking up pictures because I always like to put up different pictures on the program. I think you have the best black and white picture maybe of anybody that I've ever seen. Have you seen it? Did you see it?
Thank you. I saw that you just tagged me in one, but I didn't see.
Yeah, you got it later on. Check it out. I'm like, this is the greatest black and white. It is like the greatest thing ever. You look, it's just amazing. I was so jealous. I'm like, I don't look good in black and white pictures, color pictures. I look good in pictures that I'm not in. That's what I like to say. I want to ask you.
I was going to say, I think Breezeman mentioned my credential picture is black and white, and I think I'm the only person that would ever do that, but I don't know. I just want to be different, you know?
That's pretty badass, and you are. And say hello to Steve. Let
will.
Everybody know who Steve is.
Steve is my dog. If you follow me on Instagram, that's pretty much, I don't really post about anything that I'm doing. I always just post my dogs. So if you follow me on Instagram, you know Steve well. Sometimes I think, oh my God, I shouldn't, maybe I should stop. You know, when people post their babies like 24/7 and you're like, okay, enough. We know you have a baby. Sometimes I feel like that about Steve. And then I get messages from Lightning fans that are like, keep posting Steve. He makes me so happy. So I'm just going to keep posting my dog until you guys tell me enough is enough.
No, it's never enough. It's never enough. Same thing with Ed and Cena. Whenever he's out there, it's like, it's either hockey stuff or about his dog. And I think everybody loves it. All right, let's get into it. Plenty to get into here as the draft is upon us tonight. First off, no first-round picks for the Tampa Bay Lightning. Isaac Howard is a big name. Do you think he gets traded? I thought he would get traded. There's a possibility he could get traded this weekend because everybody's going to be on the phone. Everybody's going to be talking to each other. Do you think Isaac Howard gets traded this weekend? Because I think there's a really good chance.
Yeah, I'm with you. I put that in my story. Although, you know, with the Lightning, it's tough, right? Because we learned, I think I speak for all of us, honestly, that cover the team. Like, we learned last summer, I can't believe it's been a year, but we learned like anything can happen, right? Because Julian's going to do whatever he thinks is going to work best for the team at this time. So, you know, anything can happen, but I would think that this weekend would be when Isaac Howard's rights get traded. I mean, he's coming off a great season. You know, there are teams that are looking to build in the future, and he would be a great fit. He wants to play. And I mean, we don't have any first round picks, and he could flip them, you know, and get a immediate return. So I think obviously the sooner, the better. I think we could see that happen, you know, this weekend, obviously.
Yep. Julian is a guy that it's so funny because you were there at the fireside chat and he brought up Isaac Howard, like almost unprovoked. And we were like, oh, okay. Oh, yeah. You can play this year? Like, all right. Like we were probably going to, I mean, somebody was probably going to ask him about it, but it was just going to be like, oh, you know, college season, unbelievable year. Because we know how the Lightning go about it. And then he brought it up and we're like, wow, could he actually change his mode of operation here? And then in the exit interviews, were you surprised that he was as transparent as he was, where he was saying like, there's just no way we're going to sign him. If we don't trade him, we'll get a second round compensatory pick. And then that's it. Kind of wipe your hands. I was a little surprised that he didn't maybe not a surprise that he was transparent, but I guess just surprised that we've gotten to this point where it's like there's no pathway to Isaac Howard ever wearing a Lightning uniform.
Yeah, no, and I think I was trying to think back, was there, especially like in those fireside chats, because that is when we have the opportunity to kind of dig in and ask about prospects and things like that. And I mean, over the years, Isaac Howard's always been in the conversation. So yeah, at exit interviews, I mean, Julian was so respectful of his decision and really professional about it and everything. But to me, for him to be that honest about there not being a path, it was like, okay, he's gone, that's how it's going to be. But at the same time, over the years, I've always thought about, I just always assumed that Isaac Howard would go to Syracuse first, because that's the process that it's always been. I think I mentioned it to Ed a few times. I was like, well, he's just going to Syracuse. Like, he's going to Syracuse. He's like, I think he wants to come up, So I would assume that was communicated to Isaac Howard over the years. I can't imagine the Lightning just going about their business, not being transparent with him. So yeah, I was surprised, just because we've talked about it. I mean, he was always in the conversation. I can't remember which year it was, either this past fireside chat or the one before, that Julian was flying out to go watch him play and things like that. So it is surprising, but the Lightning want to win now, and
they do.
That's a guy you're going to get a good return on. So it might actually work out in their favor.
You brought up a great point that you just never know with Julian Brisebois, and going into last season or going into last offseason, like, did anybody see Stamkos not coming back, Sergachev getting traded, and them signing Jake Gensel? And you'll always have people that are saying, oh yeah, the Lightning were in on Gensel. They weren't. I looked it up again like last week, and there was like, oh, this is a list of 10 teams that could sign Jake Gensel, and the Lightning weren't on there.
No.
So when people say like, oh yeah, they were always in on, yeah, maybe the year before as possibly a deadline rental, but not as a guy that they were going to trade for his rights and then sign him to a long-term deal. Yeah. Now we're in the 2025 offseason. Do you think Julian makes small moves to kind of fill in this team, or do you think he does something similar, upsets the apple cart a little bit, trades a guy maybe that nobody sees to open up for another signing?
It's so I don't know if you're like me, like the past week, or the past few days, I've been trying to go back on last summer and what happened, and was there anything that could lead to something that would
read in the tea leaves? Yeah.
Could I read into it that maybe would help me figure out what's going to happen this weekend? And it's just so crazy. That was a really crazy offseason, a crazy week in general. The Sergei trade, I saw that coming just kind of down the pipes. I was kind of watching it, and he got injured, and so it kind of switched things up. But I saw that one happening. Gensel, I didn't see them bringing on Gensel. And I also thought Stammer would sign. I just thought that they would find a way to make that happen. Right. But yeah, this year is different, right? Because they made the necessary changes. They had a strong team. I obviously they don't want to go out in the first round again, so they're going to make changes. I do wonder if Julian, my thing with Julian is, when we were in exit interviews, he said, I'm really happy with the team that I have, but we know that they're going to make a change. Like, they're not cutting it, right? And the likelihood of the Panthers being good again next year, and the likelihood of the Lightning running into them, is very high. Right. Especially if what we're hearing about the Panthers bringing back Brad Marchand and Sam Bennett, and maybe even Ekblad. So I don't know if Ekblad, I don't know what the news is on him right now, but it changes every day. So obviously they want to get better, right? So I could maybe not as big as what we saw last year, but I could see Julian making, if he thinks it's going to benefit the team, I think he's really good at just doing business, and I could see a big piece. I could see it happening. I wouldn't rule anything out.
I'm with you. I love that. I love that you said that, because I think a lot of people are hesitant to make comments like that. I'm clearly not, because everybody thinks I'm crazy, because I know you saw the Spit and Chicklets thing of like, oh, Connor McDavid to Tampa. And then me not even saying that it was going to happen, but just saying, hey, hypothetically, this is what a deal would look like. Now people are telling me that I'm the worst person in the world. Forget about hockey knowledge. And I'm like, whoa. I'm not saying they should. I'm just saying this is what a deal would look like. If you want to get mad at me for speculating on anything, the one thing I say is, I feel like Mitch Marner could be a guy that comes to Tampa. I feel like if a big deal is made to get a guy out. I think Marner could come here because Coop loves him. He talks about him all the time. He's like that, he's like your son's best friend that was like you treat better than your actual son, right? It's like, damn, Dad, like be nice to me. I'm your son. Like he just always talks so lovingly and so glowingly about Mitch Marner. So I wouldn't be surprised if like a trade precedes something wild like that. But I'm with you, and I'm glad that you said what you said, Diandra, because I don't feel like the Lightning are as close as other people. I don't. Like I feel like people are stuck in, well, we have all of these guys that were Stanley Cup champions. There was 4 forwards on that team last year, and one of them was Yanni Gourde, right? That were Stanley Cup champions with this team. I'm not talking about Gensel. I'm talking Point, talking Kucherov, talking Cirelli, and talking Gourde. There's 4 guys. It's Hedman, it's McDonough, and it's Chernak. And you think about it, they brought McDonough and Gourde back. So this team, what they're trying to do is they're trying to recreate some of the magic that they had in 2020 and 2021 by bringing those 2 guys back. That very rarely works in sports because you need a different recipe to be successful year after year after year. The 2021 team was different than the 2020 team. People forget that. I mean, it's a different team, different players. Kevin Shattenkirk was on the first team. David Savard was on the second team. Like there's changes that you need to make. So I want to ask you this. Are you a little concerned that this Lightning team is too stagnant and not maybe stuck in the past? Maybe not so much the team, but the fans are looking at this like, oh, we're fine. And, oh, yeah, the only reason why we lost is because we lost to the eventual champions. Like they could have lost to Washington. They could have lost to Carolina. They could have lost to Toronto. We don't know that. They had a good team, but I don't know how close the Lightning are. What do you think?
I don't think that the team, maybe the fans maybe get nostalgic, right, of the back-to-back teams. But I think that last season was, and I actually wrote this, it was a monumental, almost like you kind of rip the rug out from underneath everyone and you're like, we're making a pivot and we're gonna evolve. And maybe we can't do it all in one season, but this is the direction we're going in. So I've thought about this so much this week, is like last offseason was a shift for me in the way that I cover the team, but like a shift in the dynamic of the Lightning, right? I think with Stammer leaving, and then you bring in like Jake Gensel and just some younger players, bringing in Connor Geekie and Moser. Moser was great. He's going to be a great piece and he's just going to get better every single year. But to me, that showed that no one's hanging on to the past anymore. And so I do think, sometimes nostalgia with the fans, comes into it, but bringing back McDonough was smart. And that showed to make a difference in the team. Like words can't even describe what he does for that team. Right. And we see it when we're in the locker room and just how he is and how much the guys love him. And so I don't think that was going back to the back-to-back days, but maybe it's kind of a mix, right? Yanni Gourde he brings the energy and excitement to the team, and he's a gritty player. And I don't think that's necessarily like hanging on to the past. But that is why I still think that we could see a big piece, like we could see a big move, because I think that they are trying to move, just kind of pivot and move. And I also think that like the Panthers have changed the way I think we're going to see the league change. I think the way that the Panthers play, the style of play that they have, I think we're going to see other teams try to kind of adapt to that and be really physical, and that'll change like the guys that you bring in, so I know the Mitch Marner thing has always been, a rumor because Coop loves Mitch Marner, but I don't know if that's the direction that they're trying to go in, honestly.
That's a great point. And it is a copycat league, right? So teams are just like where, fast puck moving defensemen, when Pittsburgh was winning all those cups, it was like, we got to get defensemen that move the puck. And, I wonder what the league was trying to emulate when they looked at the Lightning win back-to-back cups, right? Because you can't get a Stamkos, you can't get a Kucherov. Was it the third line? As much as we talk about that third line, was it the depth? Because I don't know if that's ever changed. Like that's hockey, and it's been like that forever. Is when you get to the postseason, your best players sometimes cancel each other out, and your third line has to step up. And that's what we saw with Yanni Gourde and Blake Coleman and Barclay Goodrow. And we saw that this year with Florida. We've seen it the last 2 years, but especially this year with Eetu Luostarinen. Anton Lundell and Brad Marchand. Like, I didn't think Marchand had any gas left in the tank. He reaches the fountain of youth. He meets up with Ponce de Leon down there in Sunrise, and this guy was unbelievable. How big of that gap? How big is the gap between the Lightning and the Panthers, you think?
Oh, I don't think the gap is huge. I just think that there are some tweaks that the Lightning are gonna have to make. And you talk about the third line, and I'm thinking about Paul Maurice. I can't remember which game it was, but his post game when he was talking about like playing the Lightning when the Panthers were losing to the Lightning and the shifts that they knew that they had to make, and how he kind of stepped back. I think we were talking about the PK, and he was talking about how he's like, I'm going to bring people in that played the game and can coach this the way that it needs to be handled. And I'm going to take a step back, and we're going to do everything we can to beat the Lightning. Like, that was their main focus. So
Right.
I think you're right on, like, you talk about the third line, and all you have to do to figure out what people saw about the back-to-back teams is you can research it and see what the Panthers said about the Lightning back in the day. I actually found an old Tkachuk quote when he got traded to Florida, and he was like, there's two teams in Florida. One's having success, the other wasn't. I'm going to do everything that I can in my power to make sure that we end that for them. Right. And I'm like, it's interesting to go back now and think about it. But, I think also, speaking of Tkachuk, he said, in the final that the Lightning were the toughest team that they played besides Edmonton. That to me spoke volumes. And I posted it because I wanted the fans to see, like, this is coming from a player's perspective. And he said that they knew they had to beat the Lightning in order to go anywhere. Like, he knew it was going to be a tough series. So, I don't think the Lightning are that far off, but they obviously need to make some changes, which I think Julian will do, in the next few days.
What big changes, if you had to make one big change, if there's a guy that goes out, if the guys that brings in, maybe not specifically, but what change would you make? What do you think?
Yeah, I think that third pairing, the defensive pairing, like, there were just, I felt like all season, that's what we heard, obviously that Perbix is going to hit free agency. I'm not confirmed if that's true or not, but we haven't really heard anything else. So, and saying that, I think, like, I'm thinking maybe they'll get a defenseman back there. And, that's been a work in progress. Obviously, bringing Moser and bringing McDonough back has helped so much. But in the playoffs, it was different. So I think they've got to lock that down. And then I feel like they just need to get a little bit bigger and tougher. We talk about the third line, and I'm the two pieces that I think they'll bring in a forward, and I think that they'll bring in a defenseman. How that happens and who goes, I don't know what Julian's going to do or how that's going to work, but those are the two pieces that I think that they're going to make.
Yeah, and I wonder, like, you look at how the roster is right now, right? And if it started today, right? I think you have an idea. All right, just Kucherov, Gensel, and Point. You have Hagel, Cirelli, and let's say Bjorkstrand is back. Then you have Paul, Geeky, and let's just say Gonsalves. And then Gord, Zemgus Girgensons, and is it a Mitchell Chaffee? Because he was a guy that brought a lot of, hits last year. That was his big thing. And then Moser and Hedman, McDonough and Chernak. And then, do you finally give Max Crozier an extended run with Emil Lilleberg? Because they love Lilleberg, and you still have Darren Radish. So, like, you have a full team right now.
Yeah.
But the thing is that group right there, are those 12 forwards and 6 defensemen? Of course, we got JoJo and Vazzy in net. But is that group good enough to beat the Florida Panthers? I don't think so. And that's what worries me. And I always say this. One of the hardest things to do when you're judging a team from one year to the next is how much better or worse a player gets from, year A to year B. You can always tell, like, if you get a guy via trade or you sign a big free agent, like, all right, your team's going to be better because you signed a Jake Gensel, right? It's easy to note, the impact there. But how much better is Connor Geeky going to be next year? How much better is Nick Paul going to be next year? Does Brandon Hagel take a step back, right? Can Ryan McDonough play 82 games again? That's my concern. And knowing Mac for as long as I've known him, like, I thought what he did last year was just one of the most heroics, probably too strong of a term, but I just thought it was one of the most incredible things I've seen covering sports here for the last decade plus. This dude came in his mid-30s and played 82 games.
Yeah.
That shit is crazy to me. But is that likely to happen again? knowing the way he plays the game. And I think that's something to be cognizant of. You can't expect Ryan McDonough in his mid-30s to be able to play that type of game. So, are you with me in that aspect of like, you got to get better, even though you have pretty much 18 skaters that going into the season?
Yeah, no, I think that, first of all, they're not going to go through this weekend and not make any moves. Like, we know something's coming down the pipes. What it's going to be, I mean, I definitely think a defenseman. I know Max Crozier is waiting in the wings and has been, and just hasn't had the opportunity to come up, but he's also his contract, it's a 2-way deal for the first year. So to me, that tells me, one, he's going to have to prove that he can stay there, but two, that tells me, I don't know, just to me, it made me think that that's not a permanent thing. It's a 2-way deal for the first year, and the next 2 years, it's a 1-way deal. So to me, that tells me there's still a gap there, right, where he has to prove that he can make it up there. And he's definitely, I mean, he's been working in Syracuse. I talk about Max Crozier all the time. I thought he played really well when he got caught up last year against the Panthers. Yeah,
he did, which was surprising because he played 3 games in the playoffs 2 years ago, right?
Yeah.
And you're like, wow, look at, and I think we can argue that Emil Lilleberg has played his best hockey when he was playing with Max Crozier, and I think he was just stuck behind. I think they really like Perbix. I think they really like, just the knowledge of a guy like Darren Radish, because he's been in the organization for so long. Yeah. But I think, listen, Radish, he gives you what he can give you. He's a great offensive defenseman, I think, when he gets a shot on net. But I think you got to give Crozier and Lilleberg some time to grow. It takes 150, 200 games for a guy on defense to really get used to the National Hockey League. But I'm with you. That's why, like, you think about tweaks, but they already have 18 guys, right? So that's why, are you going to bring a guy in and then not play Darren Radish or not play Lilleberg? Like, I think Julian is really going to earn his pay here this year, because that 15 needs to change.
I think it's almost harder when they've improved so much from last year, right? Like the moves that Julian made last offseason, they've improved so much. But I think it's almost harder when you're like this, right? Because you have these guys and you have a good team. There wasn't anyone that stood out to me this year that you thought, okay, I don't know. It was obvious, right? Going into last offseason, there's some guys that maybe just weren't gonna make it. They just were struggling. You didn't really have that this year. There wasn't anyone that you thought, oh, this guy's struggling, he's probably not going to be here next year. There was no one like that. And then obviously we talk about Geeky, who went to Syracuse and spoke so highly of his time in Syracuse and how much he learned and how much he feels like his game has grown and everything. And so, he's up there playing in the playoffs. So I don't know. It makes things tricky. Again, I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. This year, I absolutely have no idea what Julian's going to do.
What's the rest of the summer look like for Diandra Loux of the Hockey News?
So I work through the summer because the Hockey News there is no, like, it's year round. There's always some kind of news about hockey. So I do work through the summer. I don't really get to I get to chill, but not as much as everybody else. So I do have a couple vacations kind of planned. I'm trying to go make a trip to go see Casey in Boston.
Nice.
So I'm trying to figure out when I'm going to do that. And my
living her best life. She's living.
She is, and she just in case anyone doesn't know who Casey is, she used to cover the Lightning, but she is working in Boston for Nesson. She's covering the Bruins and kind of just all Boston sports, but she talks a lot of college hockey and things like that. It's really cool, right up her alley. So trying to make a trip up there to go visit her and get out of the humidity for a little bit. It's pretty hot down here in Tampa right now.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Yeah, Casey's done a really great job, and so is her interviewing. Who was she interviewing? Nate Thompson the other day.
Yeah.
She's just all over it, doing Bruin stuff and doing Red Sox stuff. So, man, take a leap of faith. That's why I tell people all the time, like, you may be scared to leave the nest. You may be scared to leave home and leave your friends, leave your family, but you got to go out on a limb, because that's where the fruit is. That's one of my favorite comments of all time. Diandra Loux, the Hockey News. Make sure you follow her on all social media platforms, crushing it. covering the Tampa Bay Lightning. Tell Steve we said hello. Tell your
will.
dad we said hello. Big time Tampa Bay sports fan as well. D, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Have a great weekend. Safe travels this summer.
Thanks, Jay. I appreciate it.
You got it. Diandra Loux, all over it, man. Another one of the faster rising people in sports media here in the Tampa Bay area. She's all over it, man. And such a fantastic writer too. So just love reading what she does. Really, really great stuff there. All right. Make sure you follow me on all social media platforms: Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, TikTok, Instagram, a little bit of everything. Stephanie, Chief says it takes 350 games. Chief said that to me one time too. I've always heard 150 to 250 because it's like 2 to 3 years, right? Chief said 350 to me one time. I'm like, damn, Chief, you want a guy to be a Hall of Famer before you find out if he's good? We laughed so hard that day. Oh my God. Think about it. It's 82, could be 84. 350 games is over 4 years. That is a long ass time to be able to find out if you have a good defenseman or not. 350 games. I'm so glad that you said that, because he can, even though I bust his chops about it, we go back and forth about it. He goes, what the hell do you know? And I'm like, I know, it's not me. I've heard this from other people, other coaches. Everybody says 200 games. I'm pretty sure Hetty said 200 games. And Chief is like, it's 350. It's 350. We had this conversation. We have so much fun going back and forth. He's such a trip. I'm so glad that you said that, Steph. I hope you're well. Follow me, all social media platforms: Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, TikTok, Instagram. Like and subscribe on YouTube as well. Make sure you go follow Diandra Loux as well. Really, really good stuff from her with the hockey news. Let me see if there's any breaking news. The Oilers have signed Trent Frederick to an 8-year, $30.8 million extension. A lot was made of the deal for Brad Marchand at the deadline, going from Boston to the Florida Panthers, and obviously it ended in the Stanley Cup. But another big move that Boston made was trading a longtime veteran forward Trent Frederick to the Oilers. And wow, what an incredible impact that he had. And this is a guy that is more of a depth type of dude. But if I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure that he was wearing an A. I could be wrong with this one, but I was shocked during some point in the playoffs, and it could have happened maybe after Zach Hyman went down with an injury. But Trent Frederick, a guy that got acquired at the deadline, was wearing an A in the Stanley Cup Finals. I was like, holy shit, like that is impressive. That has nothing, absolutely nothing to do with talent, how many goals you score. That has to do with the type of leader that you are and the impact that you've made in the dressing room. And I was just blown away. I was so impressed with that. So Trent Frederick, 8-year, $30.8 million contract extension to stay with the team. I love that. I think that's really freaking cool. I agree with you. It seems like a long time, but it doesn't seem like they was about the time Hedman got really good. Yeah, but I mean, he was also 18 or whatever. Like, I don't know. I wouldn't say that, but I think 2 years. I think you give a guy 1 year. How's it look? That second year, you got to see some kind of improvement, and then that third year, I think that's when you can really tell. All right. So just think about it. They play 82 games the first 2 years. It's 164 games. In the middle of year 3, you're at the 200 game mark. I think you should know whether a guy is good enough to be an NHL defenseman or not. By then, you're still wondering. I think you can't wait. You got to be ready, and you got to move on. You got to look for somebody else. How much is Ekblad against the cap? Probably going to be 7.5, if not more. I don't see how he doesn't go back to the Florida Panthers, especially when they stuck with him for all the things that he's done, suspensions for this guy got suspended for PEDs this year, and everybody just totally forgot. Everybody's talking about what he did to Brandon Hagel, and it's like, this dude got suspended for PEDs as a hockey player. You don't even see that. You can go years without guys getting suspended in the NHL for something like that. And this guy gets suspended 20 games. He comes back and it's like, hey, welcome back, man. So weird. Sure wish I knew what the hell happened with Perbix, why he regressed. I know. I can't tell anybody though. I kind of did, but I'm not going to say it. I just think it's confidence when it comes to Perbix. Confidence. It's a physical game, and I don't think he made the same type of authoritative decisions in the subsequent years after that first season where he was really good. But yeah, he'll go somewhere else, and I think he'll be better. Don't be surprised if he goes up north. He's a Minnesota guy, I think. So don't be surprised if you see him up there. But, a good player. And when you play for the Tampa Bay Lightning, people are going to look at you and say, if you could play for the Lightning, you could probably play for me. Right-hand shot defenseman. This is a guy that I think will be very attractive to teams out there that are looking for help on the blue line. So keep an eye out for that. I just don't see him coming back and being a member of the Bolts, especially after the deal that they just signed with Max Crozier and still having the guys that they have, including Darren Radish. All right, let's bring her in. I say one of the voices of the sports world in Tampa Bay, Jess Duemig, on the program. What's going on? How are you?
What is up, Jay? How have we only now gotten on this
I know.
podcast?
I know this has
Takes
been
me
far
leaving
too long.
Tampa almost.
I'm sorry that it took me that. You were just so busy. Maybe that's the thing.
Yeah, let's go with that.
announcing your life away. I'm doing such a fantastic job.
Thank you.
Let's give to anybody that doesn't know who you are. First off, you're not related to the big dog, Steve Duemig. I know
I
a lot
am not.
of my former DAE listeners that follow me here to the podcast. That's the first question that they're going to have. No relation to Steve Duemig. Did you ever meet him?
I did. So
Okay.
when I first came to USF for college, everyone was like, "Oh, you must be related to the big dog," and I'm like, "Who the hell is the big dog?" Like I had no clue. I'm from South Florida. Like I had no clue who this guy was. And didn't have an Uncle Steve, right? So it's none of that. So finally I wrote him an email, as one does in 2000, before Facebook and everything else. And I was like, dude, hi, I'm Jess Duemig. Who are you? And he's like, oh my God. Because also his daughter is Jill. So we had like the J vowel, two letter. Yeah. So everyone's like, no, you're related. I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. And I worked at a sports store. So it was like, I worked at Sports Fanatic back in the day.
Wow.
So it was just like so many ties. And finally he's like, you got to come on my show. So I was on his show.
Whoa.
I went in the studio. I met him. I met Whitney
Johnson. Yeah.
Whitney. Yep. And I was on for like 5 minutes, but it was the coolest thing. I'd never been in a radio studio, anything before. Yes, radio folks. But yeah, it was super cool to meet him, and weird how many ties there are. But to this day, I'm sure somewhere down whatever German line we're related, but I don't have an Uncle Steve. So, rest in peace, obviously. But, it was very cool to get to meet him and then be in the same market. Just a super weird coincidence, but so cool random. Nonetheless. Yeah. So right, no relation.
No relation whatsoever. So we got that out of the way. And I'm sure somebody that just joined.
You guys can all sleep easy tonight knowing that fact.
It's so funny because somebody's going to like not watch a podcast and they're going to join us in 5 minutes. And you're going to be like, whoa, she related to Big Dog Watch. It's going to happen. All right. So take us from the beginning. So you go to USF. You go to USF. It was PA announcing, was any of that kind of, at the tip of your brain? Like, what were you thinking?
None of it. I transferred from FAU after my first year. I was in finance and management. That was my major. And back then they had just instituted, you had to take calculus to be a business major. So I was like, screw that. So I went over to advertising and I was in the hot band. I was in the marching band and I played in the marching band for football. I was in the basketball pep band. And back then USF was really good. We were going to tournaments like every year. The women were, and we were in, I don't know, wherever the tournament was, I think Hartford maybe or something, Big East back then. And I was on a bus with Blake Guthrie, who I'm sure you know. And at the time, Koche Irby, they were handing out per diem back when you still got it in a cash envelope. And I was like, this is cool. Hey, what do you do? And so they told me, we do all this stuff in athletics. He was Koche was senior associate AD of external relations. Blake was the marketing director or whatever the titles were back then. And I was like, well, this is cool. I want to intern. And they're like, okay, come Monday. Like this was, whatever, a week out. And so I did, and I was annoying but I was there, and all of a sudden I'm helping produce football and basketball. And one day the PA announcer for softball called out, and they're like, hey, you want to try this? I was like, sure. Well, I get on the microphone and it was great. And then I was like, well, shit, now I want to do this more. Can I say that? I don't even
yes,
know.
You certainly can.
Fabulous. So yeah, that was the launching pad. And then I've now announced every sport in college athletics that has an announcer. I've been doing it for over 20 years, which is just insanity. Started with softball, went into all the women's sports there. So basketball and volleyball and soccer, then into the men's sports, because why not? Also basketball, soccer, and then baseball. And then I went down to FIU, when I moved to Miami, and announced everything there too, including beach volleyball and adding sports. This year I ticked off hockey. I was in there with the Lightning for their Women in Sports Night.
Yes, you did great.
Thank you. Yeah, a few years ago, I was able to announce I filled the massive shoes of John Magrino for USF football on homecoming, which was the coolest thing. I was one of the first women ever to announce college football in stadium. Just super cool. And then this year to be a part of the USF women's lacrosse season, and then also the Tampa Bay Sun season. I was the voice for both of those. The champion Tampa Bay Sun.
Champions, baby.
Yes. So super, super cool. And as I was doing all the PA, production, when I went to grad school up at Southern Miss, I came back for Christmas as you do. And at the time, Brett Delaney had been selected as the executive director of the then brand new St. Petersburg Bowl, which was played at the Trop. And I said, Brett, I'm a grad student. Do you need any help with your game? Like, let me in. And he's like, Jess, can you run my game and I'll pay you? And I was like, yeah, absolutely I can. So I helped build that game from the ground up.
Nice.
Scripting, producing. I've been there now 16 years now with the move over to Tampa and to Recher. Just super cool stuff. And then that turned into didn't turn into, but an opportunity at the Miami Beach Bowl. And then back to the Outback Bowl, now ReliaQuest Bowl, and then I added the Cure Bowl. So it's just super fun, producing, announcing, being in this world. It's insanity when I think about starting college as a finance major, going to work on Wall Street, and what I'm doing now, which is definitely not on Wall Street.
Right. What's the one game when somebody said your favorite game that you've announced? If you get one, what is it?
Ooh, that's tough. Up until this year, I would have said it was homecoming, hands down, because announcing football is such a different animal. It is 4.5 hours of highest level of adrenaline, stress, anxiety, and exhilaration that there is. There is no stop. Every play, you have to be in it. You're calling offense, defense, tackles, yards, down and distance, the whole thing, which is harder than it looks, or harder than it sounds, I should say. Yeah. And I got to tell you, I shadowed John one game and I announced the next game. It was, it's a little bit of osmosis. I've been around it for so long. Like you just know, but also then you're like, oh wait, I'm supposed to say all this. Oh yeah. And I've been writing these scripts for 100 years, it feels like, but to be on the other end of it. And I got to tell you, it made me a better producer because I'm like, oh my God, this is what he has to listen to all the time.
No doubt.
So it used to be that, but I got to tell you, the Lightning game this year, was so cool. Like it was the Lightning just do such a, being in an arena, it's a whole different world. Again, it's such a boom. The Lightning are so good. They were on the playoff run. The game I did, they scored 8 goals. And I was like, and it's funny because when I did the USF game, I don't know if you remember this, and everyone's like, well, did you get your touchdown call ready to go? And I'm like, no, I'll figure it out. Sure as shit, the first opening kickoff is run back for a touchdown. I'm like, oh, here we go. Baptism by fire, babe. Boom. And it was so uncomfortable. I'm not an over-the-top announcer. That's why I really enjoy baseball, softball. I'm not like, and now, I'm not big like that. And it's so It's so awkward, but oh, it was so much fun. Such a rush. But the Lightning, that crew there is phenomenal. I mean,
No
John
doubt.
Franzone and his team are just insane. Stephen Fry producing one of the best producers I've ever worked with. Just on it, tells you what you need to know, nothing more, nothing less. It's great. And so it was just this culmination. Full transparency, I'm not a big hockey fan just because I'm not. But it was super cool.
Yeah, Lightning. You don't have to be a hockey fan to be a Lightning fan. I think we've learned that in the Bay
Well,
Area.
you don't have to be a hockey fan to enjoy a hockey game.
That's
right.
true.
The environment there is so fun. No matter what, whether you like it, love it, hate it, you could still go and have a good time. And it was just really, really neat to be a part of that.
Look at David Terry. Jess is a great voice for sports, easy on the air. The one thing that, so what's the focus then? Because you're not an over the top, because I've done a lot of different things. I don't know. I've done PA, I think a couple times for the women had like a Four Nations tournament up in Wesley Chapel, but a lot of my stuff is radio, podcasts, broadcasting, TV, radio. What is the main focus before you crack the mic for that day? Because before I ever did any kind of broadcasting for USF, and the first sport I did was baseball. I went around and I asked the Rays guys and the Bucks guys and the Lightning guys, like, what can you do? And some of the best advice I got was from Dave Mishkin. And he said, pronunciation and preparation. He's like, pronounce everybody's names correctly and be prepared. And after my first game with the great Jim Loux, he goes, you were very prepared for the game. And I go, wow, that's exactly what I wanted to hear. Because, you know, you're going to make mistakes. The timing might be a little bit off, but you don't want to be underprepared and you want to make sure you get everybody's names right. What's kind of your focus when you try to keep it simple? Like, what are the bullet points for you to make sure that you have a successful night doing whatever you do?
I got to tell you, I shouldn't admit this. I don't prepare. I really don't. And I'll tell you but I will say this, PA is very different than play-by-play or color. I don't need to know if he pitched a no-hitter that one Tuesday when he had half a mustache and a little bit of a 5 o'clock shadow. I don't need to know that. So for me, the best advice I ever got when getting ready for football, because again, baseball, softball, very basic. You are now batting, so-and-so. Again, pronunciations 100%. But over the years, like you learn the linguistics, you know what? I went up to someone, I'm like, oh, they're Brazilian, right? So it's like this. And they're like, yeah, how'd you know that? But so you get a hang of it. The part that I focus on. So John Magrino, who is the voice of the Bucks, voice of the Bulls, voice of college football playoff, all that, was in China for the Olympics, which is why I got to do homecoming as a fill-in. He told me, Jess, no matter what you do, less is more. If you're unsure, don't say a word. No one's going to miss it. But if you bungle it, you're done. Right. And I was like, okay. He's like, you'll be in your head. Just stay out of your own head. So that's the main one on some of the more involved sports. But for me, mine is get there early. Make sure you have water, warm water or room temperature, and then make sure you have a Coke, because at some point you need something other than water, because you're depending what brand of water the school uses, it can get you. So for me, I need to get there. I'm one of the few PA announcers. I keep a scorebook, especially on baseball and softball, because it keeps me in the game. So I'm always prepared with that. I have it with me. Plenty of time to fill in lineups, plenty of time to get the pronunciations that I need. I write out my own phonetics. I wish I could tell you I can read dictionary phonetics, and I can, but I don't like to, because people don't know how to write dictionary phonetics.
Right. It's like a court stenographer. Like, you just need to know what it sounds like for you. You're not writing it to show it to somebody else.
Right. Exactly. And that's it. And then I check anything that's weird in the script with the marketing person or the producer, and off we go. I mean, if you start overthinking in PA, if you try to do too much, you're gonna, like, there's no need for it.
It sounds like you're doing too much, right? I mean, that's the thing, is you hear it. It's so funny, and I knew I was having you on this show all week, but I was just literally having this conversation with somebody yesterday about an announcer, and just knowing when to shut the up and just let it breathe, just relax. Man, I'm so glad that we're talking about this. What was it like to be part of the Tampa Bay Sun inaugural season? I interviewed Coach Denise Schulte Brown and Christina Uncle before they even picked the team's name.
Oh, wow.
A year and a half ago, and interviewed Jordan Listro and Erica Timrak, and of course, Greg Wolf is a dear friend, and
Yeah.
how important he is to Tampa Bay sports. But just to be able to be a part of something like that from the ground up, and to be able to know that you're making history. This is the first women's professional sports team in the history of Tampa sports, and then they win the freaking championship. Jess, like, can you really put into words, like, do you realize how important and how monumental and how historic something like that is, or is it going to take some time?
It's really weird because it's so hard sometimes to not be jaded, because I've been in sports for so long, right? And I don't want to get like overly political at all, but like when you're a woman coming up in sports, there's some warnings that you get, like, don't date the players. This isn't what this is for. Make sure you're always professional. Don't be a fan. Pretend like you've been here before. And that's all well and good. And definitely, good advice. But it gets really hard to get excited. Right. And it's pretend like you've been here before is a big one. Like, you can't always be surprised and always be so, oh my God, this is like the first time I'm doing anything. And it's like that compared to like making history is really tough. Because I feel like when you say, no cheering in the press box and whatever, like, it's very different when you're in your home stadium and there is no press. Like, we weren't in with the press the way you are maybe at the Bucks games or at the Lightning or even the Rays. So we talked about it every time, right? We talked about it being, this is cool, this is exciting, but at the end of the day, it's just soccer, right? And I don't mean to downplay that, but you gotta keep it in perspective. And what really hit though was when we went down on the field after the game. See, we're in our little box, you know. We don't hear the fans, we don't feel it so much the way you do in some of the other sports. So it was very cool. And then to be part of the boat parade was so fun. And it was very cool doing helping advise on the entire production, right? Because my voice is one very small part of that. Obviously, with the video production and the music and the everything else. And Greg, like you said, does a fantastic job in hosting. And then they add a mascot. Like, it's super cool. Every one of those is a first, and so it's like, it's super cool, but it doesn't hit you until the very end. And we're like, wait a minute. We just made history like 100 times this season. Everything we did was historic. The first goal, the first other goal. Like, it was just really, really neat. The first penalty kick. I remember we were so ready for the one game that was going to go for the first time, or the friendly that was going to go into extra time and then PKs. And we were like writing the script on the fly because whoever expected that game to be going into PKs. And it was great. It was super fun.
I love it. And I love that for you. And I'm with you. I mean, covering sports for as long as I have, like, I at the end of the day, I think in the last couple of years, I've kind of let myself enjoy the moment a little bit more, because you're right. You do get jaded. And I remember one of my first things I went to go cover, and one of the first playoff games, and watching the Lightning and the Rangers. And I'm a kid that grew up a Ranger fan, and I'm there and I'm watching my favorite team growing up played against the Lightning. And I'm just like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. Like, it was so crazy. And then years go by and you get jaded and you're like, it's not about me, it's about them. But just in the last year or two, I've just been like, I think it's okay to enjoy the moment, right? I understand you're not a fan. We're not a fan. We're not there to cheer. It's not about us. But I also, I every once in a while, especially, and I know, Miss Sonia Bryson, who does such a phenomenal job with the national anthem. Sometimes when she's singing the national anthem and I'm in the press box, I allow myself to kind of close my eyes and take a deep breath and realize, like, shit, man, like, we are we have one life. And think about it. We're just so fortunate to be able to listen to Miss Sonia Bryson Kirksey sing the national anthem probably 250 times in my entire life. Like, it's crazy to be able to be that fortunate. So what's the next step now? You're scaring me. What's the deal? Tell everybody.
Yeah. So I am, I'm figuring it out. I'm still announcing. I'm still producing. I still produce the few bowl games, and a little up in the air with what's going on at USF right now. But that's fine. I'm figuring it out. I'm putting my name in the hat for the Olympics in LA,
Yes.
hopefully the World Cup. My voice is one of the few female PA announcer voices in the country, I came to find out, certainly in the area. But I'm hoping to do more like panel moderation, voiceover work, all that sort of stuff. I think it's funny. And I don't know if you remember this, but I don't think it was you, but somebody else told me after I did that football game that I had a very soothing voice. And I was like, I don't think that's a compliment. This is football. This is gridiron. And they're like, when you would say third down, it's like third down. I'm like, I do not sound like that. And they're like, no, you kind of do. I was like, I absolutely do not sound like that. You bite your tongue.
Right.
But so who knows? I mean, I think, what people don't know is I have a whole corporate life. This has always been adjacent. This has always been like the side hustle, but it's so fun and it's the cool stuff, right? No one wants to hear about the really amazing spreadsheet I wrote that
she's a Microsoft Excel badass.
I gotta tell you what. But yeah, it's we shall see. I've been working in marketing and revenue strategy for my entire career in advertising and more recently in sports, but it's time will tell. I'm taking some time now to spend time with family. I have some health stuff that I have to take care of. And then it is, again, it's seasonal. It's summer. So I'm enjoying it, getting tan. And then who knows, come football season. Yeah,
Look at that tan. One thing that I've always just learned over the years too, and I think you just kind of going into, we were just talking about like living in the moment. Sometimes when you get into a position and you don't realize the impact that you make, you downplay it. You're a very humble person and you're so uber talented, but don't forget the doors that you are opening by doing what you're doing and what you have done, because there are women out there, there are girls out there that aren't going to be able to play ball at the next level. And, maybe their career stops for a certain, and they love the game and they never thought about being able to be a PA announcer. And they're going to be, there's some girl that maybe is at USF right now, or maybe going to USF right now. And she heard you at the game this year for Mitch Hannes and the guys. Like, you just never know.
It's funny that you say that, and I'm not usually one to toot my own horn.
You can toot that shit all day here, sister.
There we go. So, okay, one of the coolest experiences I've ever had. Well, two. One was most recently this year. USF softball and USF baseball were playing on the same day, and baseball oddly started before softball. And I think softball was playing Memphis,
which is rare because usually softball plays before baseball.
Exactly. So I come down the stairs. I'm like going to after the game or whatever. And this girl is like literally staring at me. And I say this girl, she's in college. And I'm like, hi, I'm just on my merry way. And she's like, wait, are you Jess? And I'm like, oh God, what did I do? Yes. I'm like, whose sister is going to tell me I botched their name? I'm like, I'm so sorry. She's in opposite team gear, but I was like, I don't think we just played this team, but whatever. And she's like, I just want to tell you, you are so inspiring. I loved listening to you. I was supposed to be keeping the book for softball, but I was listening to you. And I was like, oh my God, it was so cute. She's like, I was listening to you. And again, this is a college girl. It's not like some 10-year-old. And she's like, I already friend requested you on LinkedIn and I want to follow, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, oh, amazing. That's super cool. And she was like, I can't wait to be in your shoes one day. And I'm like, okay. And then I had one other experience like that in the press box at football, because when I announced football, I was literally the second female to ever announce college football. The first, though, to do it in regular season. It wasn't a bowl game. And these two, again, intern college girls come up to me and they're I was like midway through a turkey sandwich or something. And they're like, are you Jess? And I was like, yeah, like the announcer for today. And I was like, yeah. And again, for me, I'm just like, yeah, another day, whatever. And they're like, oh my God, we are so excited to meet you. And went on this little fangirl moment. And I was like, oh my God, people give a shit. It's kind of nice. Yeah. I'm usually behind the scenes producing up to that point. And so just super cool. And then I got a very stellar review from you, which I don't know if you remember this. You called me MVP of that game. And I was like,
I did.
I didn't even know you then. I was like, oh, okay. All right. Maybe this is something then. And I keep that like in my brain, that lives rent free, and I love it and I appreciate it for sure. And like, we're full circle here, man. It's so cool.
Yeah. I every single time you announce a game, I just know it's like, it's going to be perfect. It's weird to see that because but I love the way that you call a game because, and you described it here early in our conversation, is you don't try to do too much. You get in, you get out. You don't make it about yourself. You don't over dramatize everything and say like, oh my God, this and that. Listen, I love personality. Don't get me wrong. I love when people have their shtick and their gimmick and they do their thing. That's fine. But there's something so beautiful about simplicity in life and about something like that where you go, and especially when every time I see you call a USF baseball game, like I just and not saying I don't like the other people that get a chance to do it, but when you do it, it's just, I know you're going to get it right. I know the pronunciations are going to be right. And I know the things that are important to you, even before knowing when I'm asking you today, I know the things that are important to you to do the job correctly. I feel the same way when I try to do my jobs. And there's sometimes when I'm like, I'm pretty sure I know how to say this guy's name right. And before I say it, I'll like lean in and I'll be like, all right, we're good. We're on the same page. Like you have to sometimes, like in life, you got to use your cheat sheets when you can. You got to work on the back of the Arizona can. So like for me, I was like, all right, if Jess gets it right, I'm right, and it makes me feel a lot better, especially when it's like a relief pitcher or like somebody that comes in at the last second, and I'm just like, I didn't have time to look up YouTube and look up this kid's high school stuff. He's some random left-handed pitcher that hasn't pitched in 3 months.
Right. He's going to throw 2 pitches before we put on another song.
He's got a silent E with an X in the middle with an RELE or something like that. Is it really? Is it real? I don't know. And then I just lean in. I'm like, I think it's this. And then you say it and I go, all right, welcome back. And I say the exact same thing. So if you're wrong, I'm wrong, sister.
Safety in numbers, babe. Safety in numbers.
You got that right. Jess Duemig, one of the voices of not just Tampa Bay sports, but sports everywhere. Please don't. And I know, again, you're so humble and you're so self-deprecating at times. Don't ever make light of the fact of the impact that you have made and continue to make, because those experiences that you have with people coming up to you, like it's just the beginning. Like I'm telling you, the more that you do this, the more and more people are going to seek you out, and you're seeing more and more of women finding roles in sports that you didn't see 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago. So thank you for joining me. Thank you for all that you do. I appreciate your friendship. Best of luck.
Thank you.
I'll see you around. You better keep in touch. Back. And have a great rest of your weekend. We'll talk soon.
Thank you. This was so fun, Jay. Thanks so much.
You got it. Jess Duemig. Unbelievable. Just love chatting. What a great story. Again, if you miss any of our interviews, it'll be up on my channel, tiny.cc/Recher. I post all of my interviews up on my YouTube channel. This is why you have to like and subscribe, because everything is up there. But that is what you're going to get here on this show. Right? You're going to get interviews on the show that you're not going to get anywhere else, right? Everybody else talks about the same old shit. That was one of the best interviews I think we've ever done on the podcast. We've had 3 bangers today, 3 absolute bangers with Jess Duemig, with Diandra Loux, and with John Romano. Like, I had so much fun with all 3. And we were just talking about, Friday shows, we never know. Crushed it. Crushed the freaking interviews. All right, let's real quick, because 2:00 is coming up. I like to get out before 2:00, but we'll keep going today. Couple of big things when it comes to the U.S. men's national team. All right, soccer. They win their game 1-0 against Saudi Arabia last night, and they move on to take on Costa Rica here in the Gold Cup. And we're seeing some good things. It took them a little while to get going last night, but you're starting to see more and more of the play of Mauricio Pochettino. And again, no Weston McKennie, no Christian Pulisic, no Yunus Musa, no Timothy Weah. Like, there's a lot of guys that have not played yet. No Anthony Robinson. So, like, these are 5 huge parts of the team that we have not seen yet that give me a lot of optimism going forward if you're going to play like this. Now, Freeze's in goal. Are they going to switch back to Matt Turner? I think they probably should, because Matt has the experience and, of course, being a Premier League guy as well. Tim Ream is 37 years old, And I was like, are we really going to be good? The position group I'm worried about most is the center backs. Tim Ream is getting old. I feel like I've been saying that for 5 years. He's 37 years old, but my guys' passes through the channels are phenomenal. And again, I said this, I think, the other day. Pep Guardiola, Manchester City skipper, has said, if you were 25, you'd be on my team, but you're 35. Said that a couple years ago. And then Chris Richards, fresh off of a big FA Cup win with Crystal Palace, he scored the goal last night. He's been really good. Just look for the guy with the fro. Our center backs are so funny. We got an old white dude with long hair and a black dude with a huge fro. Like, you cannot, they're just an ebony and ivory in the back line. I love it. They stick out, both of them. It's great. And then, all right, well, let's see what happens with the right back spot. Hopefully that'll be Serginho Dest, left back Anthony Robinson. And then you start looking at the middle of the pitch. Where are some of these guys going to play? Because this team is looking like, if we can get everybody back, everybody firing on all cylinders, maybe they will have a good showing here in the World Cup next year. I feel a lot better now than I did 2 weeks ago. All right, UFC 317 tomorrow night, right there at T-Mobile Arena, Las Vegas, Nevada. The main event, the lightweight scrap between Charles Oliveira and Ilia Topuria. This is for the vacant lightweight championship because Islam Makhachev has given up the title. He's going up to welterweight. You look at these two guys, right? Ilia moving up himself, vacating the crown there at the featherweight spot. He's a smaller guy than Charles Oliveira and does not have as much experience. Do Bronx, Charles, 35-10. Ilia 16-0. And I was talking to one of my players yesterday, and they're like, Charles. I will not. And he's a minus 50 favorite. I will not bet against a guy like Ilia Topuria because he reminds me of a guy like a GSP, where, like a Demetrius Johnson, where they're just such a good, well-rounded mixed martial artist. It's going to take a special fighter to beat them. And listen, Do Bronx, Charles, he's got a 3-inch weight advantage. 3-inch height advantage, excuse me. He's going to have a 5-inch reach advantage. He's fantastic on the ground. A Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. But I just look at Ilia, and I just think he's a different cat. He's just a different dude. And his signature strikes per minute, 4.69. And that's compared to 3.40 for Charles. Charles is 35. Ilia is 28. Charles has got all the skills in the world. I think he's one of the best fighters in the world, but I just think Ilia is on a different level. I would have loved to see Ilia against Islam, but I think he comes away with that. Alexander Pantoja versus Kai Kara France. That's for the flyweight title. That's the co-main event there. And Kai Kara is a guy that, was he ever going to be able to live up to that expectation? Training with some of these guys, training with the Volkanovskis of the world, training with Stylebender, Israel Adesanya as well. Is he ever going to live up to that expectation? He's really, really come on as of late. He is the underdog at plus 200. I think he finds a way to beat Pantoja. And listen, that flyweight division is wild. Ever since we've gone on from the Demetrius Johnson and Henry Cejudo days, I mean, the guy has the belt for a couple of fights and then somebody else and and it's going to be a fun fight. Those fights are never boring. The other fight I want to talk about is Beneil Dariush and Renato Moicano. These are two veterans in the game that if you don't know them, if they don't sound like household names, you should know them because they've been around for a very long time. Both 36 years young, both guys that have been in there with world champions before. Go check out that fight. That's the fight to certainly keep an eye on because that, you could be moving closer to a title shot. All right, guys, make sure you follow me on all social media platforms, Facebook, YouTube. Whoa! Stop. Hammer time. Noah Dobson being traded from the New York Islanders to the Montreal Canadiens and signing an 8-year, $9.5 million extension. There you go. It was wondering if it was going to be a move for the Columbus Blue Jackets to make, or a move for the Les Habitants to make. But wow, Noah Dobson getting traded from the Isles to the Canadiens. You got Lane Hudson there already, Gooley there, Reinbach. Watch out, man. Montreal is loading up. They are loading up. Don't necessarily see what the return is quite yet for them, but you'll be able to follow it on all social media platforms. All right. That's going to wrap it up for me, guys. I hope you all have a wonderful weekend. Make sure you follow me on all social media platforms: Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, TikTok, Instagram. Shout out to Chan Leonard. For the contract, but carve out a portion to contribute to the continued support of that young lady whose mother sold her out. Chan Leonard, you are a guy that have contributed a bunch. Thank you so much. As well as our guy, David Terry. Listen, I can't do this without you guys. Every single super chat helps. $1, $2, $5, $10, $20. Every little bit helps, guys. And including our main sponsor here, Honest Hammer Custom Builders LLC, 813-244-0956. If you want to join up and be a partner here on the program, just let me know. And also the super chats, man. Every single little bit helps. Like and subscribe as well on the channel. Back on Monday, Ian Beckles joins us at 12:30. I know Scott Reynolds is going to join us next week. We've got a couple other irons in the fire. But yeah, what a great show. Again, a big thank you to John Romano, to Diandra, Loux, and to Jess Duemig for joining us on the program. Everybody have a safe and a healthy weekend. I love you all. See you on Monday at noon right here on the Recher Podcast. I am gone. Peace out.